Mr. and Mrs. Livingston, we have kidnapped your son. Pay $100,000 or he dies. Signed, the Jews. Are you kidding? Are you kidding me? Who in their right mind is going to believe this note? It's the Jews, Martin. They're going to want more than $100,000.
We're right there now. In fact, I think tomorrow, in my time, Pacific Coast, on February 2nd, will actually tip into what I call the overwoo relative to some metrics that I have.
Well, we mustn't keep our public waiting, huh? It's showtime, Phil.
Hey guys, Rafi here from the Endgame Investor, and I'm really excited to have Clif High on my channel today. I've heard a lot about you, Clif. I don't know a lot about you directly, but I know that our audiences are very similar, and a lot of people have been waiting for us to chat. You know, I'm a Jewish person, and you say a lot about my people, which is fine. And before we get into that subject or anything that's going on in the world, I wanted to start with two stories to give you and your audience and my audience some context. So just like frankly speaking, a lot of people on my side of the world, or my the people that I know, they call you an anti-Semite, and I don't care about that, because I have a very personal story with anti-Semitism that I don't think anybody knows, but I want to share it now. So without not accusing you of being or feeling anything about anybody, about anti-Semitism, without anti-Semitism, I would not exist. Literally, physically, my body would not be here. I would not be born. And the story around that is that my grandfather, he was a mechanic, or in the 1940s, 1950s, 1930s, 1940s, around World War II. And he was applying for a job, I think, at Pan American Airlines, Pan Am. And on his application, on his employment application, he put in that he was a Jew, because back then it asked you, you know, if you're a Christian, if you're a Jew, if you're whatever. They were allowed to ask it back then. So he put the check marks Jew. And he didn't get an interview, even though he was one of the first in the room for the interview for the mechanic job at that time. So then a few weeks later, he came in again and he filled out the form, and this time he put Christian or whatever. He didn't put Jew or whatever it was. And then he got the interview very quickly, and then he got the job. And he said, you know what, screw you. I'm not taking the job. You're a bunch of anti-Semites, and I'm never going to fly you. I'm never going to fly on your flight. So then maybe it was like a few months later. So a few months later, he needed to take a flight to somewhere across the country, whatever it was. I don't know. My mother knows the details to this story. I just know the basic outline of it. And he refused. The only flight that was available was that airline that he didn't get hired from because he was a Jew. So he said, I'm not taking this flight. I'm going to take the train. So he took the train, and in the train car where he took that train, he was sitting across from a guy who was totally drunk, and he was just like partying and just like being very uncouth and rude. And he asked this guy, like, what's your problem? Why are you getting drunk? Like, could you just calm down? He's like, no, you don't understand. I was about to take this flight on Pan Am, and like I didn't make the flight. I missed the flight, and so that's why I'm on this train. And that flight, you know, it crashed and everyone died. So that was the flight that my grandfather was supposed to be on, and he refused to go on it because they didn't hire him as a Jew. And this is before my mother was born. So I would not exist if not for anti-Semites. So I don't really care about anti-Semites. They're not my thing. Whatever, people feel what they feel about whoever they want to feel about, and it doesn't really bother me. The second story that I want to tell you is about the certain medical interventions, just simply about where I'm coming from. I was never really against these specific sorts of medical interventions per se. But I think in January, February, just before this whole crazy thing broke out with that disease, I had someone over, a fellow Jew from Chabad, Lubavitch, if you ever heard of them. And we were arguing about these certain types of medical interventions. And I said, this is like January, February 2020. And I said, his name is Yossi. I said, Yossi, look, I don't agree with you about this thing. He was very against these things. And I was like, you know, I give my kids these things, and when you know, according to the schedule, and I'm not worried about them and whatever. And I believe in the science. And I said, look, I'll tell you this. If it ever happens that the government forces you to give your kids these things or threatens you in any way, I will 100% be on your side, and I don't care about anything else. But I will tell you that 100%, and that's exactly what happened 2 or 3 months later. And now I'm questioning everything. So that's where I'm coming from. I don't exactly come from your world, but we're merging.
Hold it. Yeah, yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Let me intrude. Okay.
Okay, your turn.
All right. So there's like only one world, right?
Right.
And there's one planet, and we make up the worlds in our heads, and we decide what we're going to share with other people within those worlds we construct out of this morass that we're trying to feel as reality. So people may say I'm an anti-Semite, but I'm not against Semitic people. I have nothing against Semitic people. I don't think Jews are Semitic. Okay, so that's an issue. So we got to get into definitions. So I'm really into language. And I know people that are even deeper into language than myself. And many of these people, like Mauro Biglino, translator for the Vatican, who knows Hebrew beyond Hebrew down to Proto-Hebrew. He's of the opinion, I won't say it that way. His writings, because I can't speak for the man, right? But his writings suggest to me that he is aware that the support for Jewish people to be part of the Bible story is very loose, very tenuous, and may be an overlay onto our real history. And none of us know, okay? No one can say they know for sure anything that extends beyond their own life, no matter how much they think it's written down and codified and chiseled into stone. Doesn't mean someone was not standing over that chisel guy making sure he put down specific things, right? So all of history can be manipulated. So I'm not an anti-Semite. I'm not even anti-Jew. I don't care about Jew people. Okay, so let me put it this way. I have Jewish relatives. Okay, the only part of Jewishness that I have a real issue with is, quite frankly, is the food. So you know, a lot of it is just not for me, right? Okay. Just not okay. So now here's the thing. The Jewish people I know are not as educated in actual reading of their own source material as am I.
That's probably true.
Yeah, and that's the shocking part. So in my opinion, those Jewish people that I interact with and have known throughout my life are operating in sort of a fog, okay, sort of a controlled environment where they're listening to their rule setters, okay? So the rabbis are judges. They set the rules and set the parameters of the social interaction.
Wait, hold on. Are you talking about religious Jews or secular Jews?
The secular Jews have that fade from the religious aspect that dominates their whole life because they live within themselves, defined within the Jewish structure. And the Jewish structure is very, very, very structured. So my early years, I was a tribal guy, okay? So my dad was in Alaska when I was like 3 years old. And I lived in Alaska with the tribal people because of the nature of his work. And so I was a tribal kid. So I grew up with a tribal ethos, right, that was structured in an entirely different way, based around shamanic impressions, you know, traveling to smell the herds, this kind of thing. So it was not a structured life. So I've always found, even though I was born and existed within the military structure because my dad was a lifer in the US military, that overlay on my world had to compete constantly from those early years of what I call the woo, right? Tribal knowledge, a different understanding of our reality. So there is no person that I am against because of any quality that is used to define that person. Okay, so I don't hate on anybody. I'm not anti anybody unless they present themselves to me and we interact, then I'm anti them. I'm not anti that category, that characteristic. That makes no sense to my mind, okay? So as a kid, I couldn't absorb the idea of prejudice relative to an aspect of one's being. So I left Alaska in 1958, 59, just after it had become a state and the big earthquake. And we went to deep south, okay? Land of the suppression of the blacks, right? And this was the period of time when the Black culture was dynamic. It was growing back from the put downs of the 40s, had started to become economically viable and was being pushed on hard by the local power structure. Okay, and so we went down, and I saw prejudice at that level, which made absolutely no sense to me at all, being prejudiced against someone for an aspect that someone else used to define them. So over my life, I have always maintained this attitude that as the inculcated kid of an Army lifer, I'm a green man. Okay, everybody's in fatigues as far as I'm concerned. And so skin color does not matter to me. Origin doesn't matter to me. Intelligence, not necessarily matter to me, but I care about smarts. And smarts are the ability to put whatever intelligence you have into your own situation and make correct decisions. So I know many people in all different kinds of cultures, Asian, white, Jewish, whatever. And these people are incredibly intelligent, and they are dumb. Okay, they're stupid because they won't apply their own intelligence to their own situation, and they've got so many barriers to examination that they cannot face themselves. And so I don't like those people at all. And I've hobnobbed with them, and they've paid me vast quantities of money to do work for them. These are the big, corporate types. Many of those people are Jewish. But it's like, if we get into it, you have to understand, I have a copy of the Talmud. I've read the Talmud.
So do I, right behind me. I have both of them.
And I have a copy.
There are two of them, yeah.
I understand. And I have the inferior. I understand that because it's in English. But I've read the Jewish mystical books because I want to know, and I'm driven by this I want to know from my tribal perspective, but also from all of my years with experimentation of psychedelics. So I wanted to know, is there anything in the Jewish tradition that would be beneficial, that would be factual and beneficial to my own personal journey? And you've read, what you find when you read the Talmud, right? And if you don't come from a Jewish tradition, imagine looking at that material from a tribal perspective.
Yes, Avi. Look,
yes.
If you look at the Talmud, not really, I don't want to have this evolve into a debate about the Talmud, or discussion about the Talmud. But yeah, look, I understand that if you read the Talmud in English, not understanding the purpose of it or the historical context in which it was compiled or how it was compiled or anything like that. Yeah, there's some incredibly racist stuff in there. And I'm not going to deny that, but just to respond to one point that you made, like nobody can prove exactly if we are the people of the Bible or anything like that. I have two quick responses to that. One is that there are some genetic tests on some sub-tribes of us, specifically the priestly caste, the Kohanim, that do have certain genetic markers from the Y chromosome that bring them back to a single Middle Eastern descent. I'm not saying there isn't genetic corruption, but the other thing.
I agree, but let's acknowledge that whole study, that whole aspect, all of the ones they found come to less than 1.2% of the Jewish population.
Look, I'm not really that familiar with the numbers of it because frankly, I don't really care about the exact, I'm not into like proving that I'm a genetic descendant of these people. But what I can tell you for 100% sure, that if you transport me back 2,500 years into, Roman Judea, I could talk to these people. I could speak their language. I could understand their customs. I would know pretty much exactly what they were doing, and I would be able to integrate into their society very quickly because I have all their customs behind me, things that I study every day. I am the cultural descendant of these people, 100%. And I identify and
qualifier, small qualifier. Okay. The assumption is that your base of knowledge is accurate, that the books you're reading are accurate. Okay, so we've always got to put that in there.
Yep.
And so I agree with you. I don't want to get into the religious aspect of any of this, and I'm not even defending. If people want to say that I'm anti-Semite, that's fine. I don't care one way or another, and nothing
Neither
I can
do
do
I.
about it. Okay, but let me also explain that. So over my life, I've taken a lot of psychedelic drugs. All right. When you take psychedelic drugs, you break through specific barriers and you look at the world in a specific way that seems to reinforce my tribal impression of things.
Well,
And so
I'm also tribal because I consider myself coming from the tribe of Judah, and to be clear, I haven't taken any psychedelic drugs. I don't think I could handle them. So that's one of our differences, I guess.
Right. But my point being in this, that's why I will go back to what I consider to be base knowledge points in discussions. And I'm not really trying to be argumentative or to start a debate. I just want to have my understanding be accurate as to the where we're beginning from, right? Mm-hmm. And so we get into the racist aspect of things. We get into all of these various different aspects of things. And I personally would rather just sink below them to the humanness that's underneath it all.
Okay. Let me just lay out like just 2 or 3 minutes what I think is happening in the world. And sure. then you'll take on, what you think is happening. But look, obviously what has happened in the past 3 years has driven me up a wall. And I see it as I see Jews, at least the people who call themselves Jews now, as leaders of the world in both the good and the bad sense, meaning we are talented. I don't know if it's a genetic thing or if it's a God's chosen thing or if I'm just making up both of those things. I don't know, but we seem to come out on top of many different power broker centers, and all you have to do is look at the Bible to see why that is so. I mean, you have the Joseph story where Joseph takes over all of Egypt and then brings his brothers, the children of Israel. This is assuming that we're descendants of them, which I'm assuming now. And he takes over the government and he enslaves the Egyptian people, and then it reflects back on the children of Israel, and they become slaves. Or you have the book of Esther, which is later in the Bible, where Esther becomes queen of Persia. And she deposes Haman, who tries to kill all the Jews, and then the Jews come out on top again. Or you have the book of Daniel, where Daniel gets into the Babylonian government. It's the same story over and over again. So yeah, there's a repeating theme in the Bible where the Jews are always on top of the government and influencing things. So what I see there's Jews on the really bad side of this whole medical equation, very bad side, Jews that are I think very bad people. And there are Jews that are very good people that are fighting the other side of this. For example, like none of them are perfect, but you have Alex Berenson, you have Brett Weinstein, you have the Rebel News, Avi Yemini, and Ezra Levant. And there's obviously we know Jews on the other side. There's Albert Bourla and who's the CDC director, Rochelle Walensky, all these disgusting people. This, in my view, what is going on is a Jewish civil war being led by Jews on one side and another side. And they're fighting each other with the world in the background, because that's just what we do. Anyway,
let's stop there.
What's your view?
Okay, so let me frame it another way. All right. So let's take all of that out of the equation, and I will use different words for you. So okay. we have power structure number one that we can determine is in play, constantly effective for hundreds of years, and we would call them the evil ones. Okay, they're on the bad side. They want to control everything, dominate everything. They are in that position. They're trying to kill us all with their medical intervention, weaponization, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay,
so that's power structure number one. That power structure is not limited to a single racial group. All right, that power structure is all around the planet, as we see with all of the different countries, even though there may be racial groups involved and dominant in various different places and so on. Then there's power structure number two. Power structure number two is basically the mass of the humans here, right? Now, within power structure number two, there are events and forces moving that cause certain things to occur, because we can think of power structure number two as the herd or the source material. And the universe has within it this idea. Now, power structure number one has an ethos that is intensely religious and has nothing to do with being Jews. Nothing.
You mean the evil people?
Correct. Okay. The evil people. So the evil people come to exist because of this state of affairs that I'm going to describe. So and I'm going to use, I don't want to get into numbers and shit, but I'll use a few numbers. Some unknown time in the past that exceeds 6,000 years, a group of approximately 250,000 space aliens landed on Earth. Those space aliens,
you believe this literally?
Correct. This is factual.
Okay.
This is factual. This can be derived from reading all of the Vedic literature, all of the Jewish literature. If you read the Hebrew for the Torah and the description of what's going on, there's 613 commandments, not 10. They describe dealing with.
I know that it's called Taryag mitzvos, but like just ask you a quick question. Can you read Hebrew?
I don't want to get into it. I'd rather not. Okay, so my knowledge.
I can. So I'm just.
I understand. Okay, and I'm concentrating more on Proto-Hebrew. Okay, so I have to go through Hebrew to get there. So I'm not stopping, so to speak. Right. Okay. So and Proto-Hebrew, I think, is a mislabel. I think this first tongue that they're talking about predates Hebrew, and Hebrew derived from it in a way that is not as the linguist.
So you mean historically something older than biblical Hebrew?
Correct. Way older. Okay, pre-Ice Age. Or pre-last Ice Age, right? So older than 12,000 years. But in any event, so here's the story. 250,000 space aliens land on Earth. Within about 20 or 30 minutes, wherever they land, they conquer all of the people there because of their superior technology. These people have the Baimanai, as they're described they can make stone fly. They can create a stone pyramid and make that thing fly. And they can have people in it shooting down at you and take over your village like that. Okay, we have this repetitiously throughout human history. We have this description of these space aliens coming down and kicking the shit out of everybody. All right, now, these space aliens landed. There was the biggest cadre of them that landed in India, but they spread out throughout all of Eurasia.
Yeah, are they humanoid? What are they? Like?
Yeah, they're the Elohim. Okay, these are large humans. Now, these
you're talking about the Anakim and the B'nai Elohim and Bereshit.
Okay, and it goes back even further than that. They're the Devi, the Theoi, all of the various names that all of the various cultures have applied to these are the same people if you run this through a linguistic analysis, taking out the characteristics and leaving behind the labels. Okay, you're getting the same descriptions over and over and over again. So we have cuneiform descriptions of an invasion of people coming down. These beings claim to have 6 genders between breeding male and breeding female. Where did that come from?
The lefties will be happy with that.
Okay, but it's also repeated in the Vedic literatures that these beings altered their own genetics to create multiple genders for the purpose of their own social order. This 250,000 people or beings, we don't know if they were remnants, we don't know if they were being chased or whatever, but these were very warlike beings, and they monkeyed with our genetics. Okay. In that monkeying with the genetics, there was this occurrence that happened. And I don't want to take all your time with this, right? But okay, so there was a fight between them. The Elohim, the people that became the Elohim of the Bible, and you really should read Mauro Biglino's translation of it. But the people of the Torah, the Elohim, were driven out of their part of India and Northern Asia into what we now think of as Ukraine, Khazaria. There, they did medical experiments and they created a group of people that are now the descendants. Now we're dealing with the descendants of that group of people that the Elohim created up in Khazaria. Is
that me?
No, not. Well, yeah, actually, you probably have some of the genetics there. The people that they took to alter came from southern Germany, and in the 1300s we find the first genetic traces of the first Jewish family in this particular region of southern Germany, from which we find that's where the Elohim extracted all these people and took them into their labs, their dons, the domes that allowed people to live for fantastic lengths of time because of the electromagnetic radiation that they were living within. And that occurred, and they created what we would think of as all of the races of the people that have anything towards a white skin. Okay, we are an adaptation on the original tribal peoples that were here. So you do not find a tribal person anywhere on this planet that originates naturally that has white skin. We were the adaptation that was caused by these people.
So this includes you also? We're both like alien human hybrids?
Correct. Yeah. So okay, so now here's the difference though. between us and the evil ones. All right. So now let me just continue that story for a bit. All right. So the Elohim.
It's fascinating to me. I didn't know any of this. Okay.
Okay, so the Elohim who were doing the experimentation in the Gons, which we called garden in the Bible, such as Garden of Eden. Okay, these Gons, there was one that covered all of Ukraine as Khazaria. The people that worked there, the El, were driven out by their enemies that came from India. And so the people that they had mucked with, all of the people they'd created, were left without the rulers. Those El then went to South Yemen and they conquered the tribes of the Essenes that were falsely labeled Jews, in my opinion. Okay.
Meaning the Essenes that were recorded by Josephus as being like very like washy and germophobic and stuff?
Correct. Okay. Now that characterization aside, that's where the tribes of the Jews come from, was South Yemen. The Elohim came there, conquered these tribes, and forced them on this migration to what we now think of as Judea. And thereafter, all kinds of weird ass history happens. So
wait, what when they forced the people into Judea, what year is that in the common counting? Around when?
I cannot state a number because I have no confidence.
Is it pre First Temple, Second Temple?
Sure. No, way pre First Temple.
Okay,
pre First Temple. Okay. The record we have for that says that over half of those of the tribes died in that journey. So this was not a soft march. This was moving every damn thing quick because the Elohim were being pursued by the other part of that landing group.
Hold on, can I just interject with a question? I'm just curious, and I just mean this, like, I just want to know, did you see any of this in any like LSD vision or something?
Oh no. This is all written shit, dude. This is all from documents that I've spent a lot of money acquiring and books I've read over the years. My LSD is crap, by the way, in terms of the psychedelic.
Whatever. I don't know my vocabulary. I'm just psychedelic.
No. So my use of psychedelics was purely to journey to hyperspace. Okay, and so I took mescaline and psilocybin primarily, but I also experimented with phenylamines and triethylamines, right? So I know my drugs. And no,
just so you know, we have 9 minutes and 50 seconds left. Take your time. It's okay. So you know.
Okay. So anyway, so my thing is this. The evil ones are a deep remnant of that group that came out of Khazaria. Okay, this is the people that we call the Khazarian Mafia. These people have won, and they're spread among races. They've interbred with Chinese, everybody, right? So the power elite have these Khazarians all throughout the planet, because here's the thing. The Khazarians have an innate belief that the Elohim, when they did this, gave them a particular thing that I call the DNA dongle. Okay, it is an aspect of DNA that does not exist in other humans. Okay. They know this. They tracked this.
So you're saying the people in charge of this atrocity, not necessarily specifically this atrocity, but all kinds of atrocities, they have a different DNA code, and a lot of them
ever so slightly.
Okay, so let's say like Albert Bourla and Rolensky and the other people that are high up in this atrocity. They are aliens or hybrids or something?
No, we're all hybrids. Okay. And this is why I fight with Brett Weinstein, right? Actually, I fight more with Heather than with Brett. Okay. But here's the deal. There is no time in Earth's history where any of us hominids could have lived without technology and survived. The evolution thing is a myth. There is no millions of years in history that had a clement temperature and non-variant conditions that would have allowed hominids to evolve. We are part and parcel of our technology. Even to this day, we could never exist without clothing, etc. You'll find no animal that you would put clothing on for thousands of years. It's not going to lose its hair. Okay, it's not going to cause adaptation that way. A lot of the shit in the theory of evolution is just that shit, because there is no place on this planet ever that those conditions existed. So the tribal people, then you've got to go back to the story of the Nummo. And the Nummo were fighting with the Elohim, and they are separated by maybe 2 million years in their interaction with the earth. So that's the story of the Mali and the people out of Africa, and they really were on the other coast, and they migrated as well, and so on. But so it's all space aliens all the way down, dude. But we're hybrids trying to find our way and scrapping with each other as to which form of hybrid is better or different.
Okay,
I'm not anti-Semite.
No, that's fine. Okay, so to wrap it up, we have about 7 minutes. So we both described where we come from, how we see the world. Fine. I don't think we're not going to reconcile that, but that's okay. So I want to like finish with how we see us coming out of this. How do we make a better world? So from where I'm standing, from how I see the world, which is very different from how you see the world, though of course we have some overlap. Look, I'm part of a people who I believe God chose to be a moral compass to the world. And my theory is, it's not my theory. It's
sorry. It's like, I have to ask because I'm a comedian. How's that working out for you?
Look, there's ups and downs. There were points in history where we did succeed, and right now we are failing. I can't dispute the fact that we are failing right now. But even as much as we will fail, eventually we will succeed, because that is the mission that God has for the Jewish people in terms of how I see the world. And as long as Israel leads the world into a bad place, just like it did with these interventions and this force, and really it was the first country to do that, to my chagrin and my embarrassment. And this is what I'm fighting, not specifically this, but this is just one iteration of it. When the Jews figure out who they're supposed to be, and if you have a moral compass for the world that's not being a moral compass, no one else is going to take its place, and the whole world's going to go to hell, which is what's happening now. But eventually we will come back to it, as God promised in the Torah and the Bible, that we will figure out who we are, whether by force or some other kind of Holocaust. I don't know what's going to happen. I hope that we can turn it around before that. But we will turn it around, and when the Jews lead the world to good, as we have done in the past, then people will wake up and we will be in a better world. And in terms of how we do that, that's really an internal matter, and it involves us repenting to God. So how do you see it?
Okay, so I see the mass of humanity, which is very small, really. Okay, all of humans could fit in the top half of Texas, and the rest of the planet would be empty. I kid you not, all humans, and we'd have plenty of room. All right. So, but I see the mass of humanity all around Earth, and I see forces and waves hitting us, and those forces and waves cause things to happen in humans the way that forces and waves cause the waves on the beach to crest and all of that, right? So we are bobbing up and down in these forces of universe that sweep through the earth and change humanity for, you may want to say, for God's purposes, okay? That would be one way of looking at it. I'm not going to put attribution for cause or anything on that. I'm just saying.
By the way, Cliff, just to be sure, do you believe in a conscious God that's directing history? It's okay.
I'd have to say no, because people are going to think that I would believe in a being. Okay. I don't believe in a being. All right. So I've died many times. I've been reborn many times. You get to a particular point. What's that?
Good job.
Yeah, and I will have to be reincarnated in this species again, which is why I work so hard to maintain it and keep it healthy, et cetera. And in this dire time, people like myself, Max Egan, et cetera, all of us internet nutters, yourself, we're out here doing just that for whatever reason may drive us. Mine is not driven by an image of a conscious being that way. So my understanding would be more like the Jain, maybe the Sikh, no image on the actual process. Okay, and I'm content with that. I'm content not to know, and I will die.
So then, what do we got to do to make the world better?
Well, there's the whole thing. Okay, so that's not within our conscious efforts to do so. So I knew in 1963, on the day that they assassinated Kennedy, that we were headed to where we are now. And I could have worked my whole life jumping up and down about the conspiracy to shoot Kennedy and all of this kind of stuff and the evil CIA and so on, and it would have altered nothing. And I met people in the CIA, and I know that this is the way it was. My dad was in Vietnam with his eyes wide open, serving in the military in that position, doing the very best he could for the humans he had to deal with within the constraints that were put on him by that position. And so my position is relatively the same, but I don't have anybody giving me directions on what to examine and what to speak about. So my view is that there are forces rolling through humanity now, which I had called the woo, and that we were getting into what I called the overwoo, when the Khazarian mafia, those people that think they had that extra dongle of DNA, when the structured, rigid world that they had put us into, that mental cage, would collapse as the woo from tribalism would erupt through there. Now we have the greatest ever punch in the gut woo for everybody that took that medical intervention. Okay, and not all of them are going to reach that point at the same time, but many of them will be in that turmoil of what in the hell have I done to myself? Why? How did this happen? Et cetera, et cetera. That's the overwoo. We're right there now. In fact, I think tomorrow, in my time, Pacific Coast, on February 2nd, will actually tip into what I call the overwoo relative to some metrics that I have.
I told you, I wake up every day right here, right in Punxsutawney, and it's always February 2nd. And there's nothing I can do about it.
And this will be like the cresting wave, and the world will not be the same from that moment on.
Forgive me if I cut in a Groundhog Day clip here because I put memes in.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
All right.
I'm a god.
You're God.
I'm a god. I'm not the god. I don't think.
But see, the overwoo is not like repetitious, right? This is something that happens. I think this is one of those that is just a monumental one that's like for 25,000 years, we're at a peak of an overwoo.
Okay.
Because
So
transition.
we got less than a minute, so I'll just sum it up in a few seconds. I think the people that call themselves Jews, I think they are the Jews of the Bible, and I think we have a job to do to make this world a better place. And if we don't do it, the world is screwed. But we will do it because the world will not be screwed, because I believe there is a conscious God that has appointed us to lead the world, and eventually we will fulfill that job and we will redeem the world in whatever way it happens. I don't know, but I'm doing my job as best as I can, as much as I see it, to do good. And you, in I guess a sense, what are we supposed to do? And then, and if we get cut off, it was really fascinating talking to you, and I really appreciate it. And I hope we can do it again.
Sure, anytime, Guy, anytime. Just give me you understand my circumstances. So yeah.
But on me, Larry, in 3, 2, 1.